Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always excited to see where we end up.
Today, we're tackling something we use every single second, whether we realize it or not. Memory.
Memory. Sounds intriguing.
It is. We've got a fascinating stack of BBC articles for this one. A 6-minute English segment, pieces from BBC Food, BBC I Wonder.
Okay, the mix.
And get this, you might be surprised at what the best way to boost memory is. Think it's brain games. Nope. Flashcards, not even close. We're going for something way more creative.
Color me intrigued. Let's dive in.
Okay, first let's set the stage. Memory. It isn't just one thing, right?
Right.
It's encoding information, storing it away, and then somehow pulling it back up when we need it, recalling it.
And each of those steps is a separate process.
Exactly. Not just one big file cabinet in our heads.
Definitely not.
And you know how some days you're sharp as a tack, others you can't find your keys? It's because memory is super influenced by our health, stress, mood, even how tired we are.
This makes sense. Like when you're well rested and suddenly everything is easier to remember.
Exactly. Now, this BBC I Wonder piece gets into learning styles. Visual, auditory, and kinesthetic.
Ah, yes, the classic learning styles.
See it, hear it, do it. I'm a visual learner, for sure. Pictures stick with me way better than words sometimes. What about you?
I lean more towards auditory, though I can see the value in each.
For sure. But what's fascinating is how this all ties into the memory technique we mentioned earlier.
Oh, you mean the more creative one?
Exactly. Drawing. Seriously, sketching things out can actually help you remember them better.
Interesting. How so?
Well, there's this professor, Daryl O'Connor, from the University of Leeds. He explains it as increased contextual representation. But what does that actually mean?
I was just about to ask.
Right. Well, it's like you're creating a richer, more detailed memory trace. When you draw, you're not just passively seeing something.
No, you're analyzing its shape, texture, its relationship to the space around it.
Exactly. You're engaging multiple parts of your brain, encoding the information on multiple levels. It's like, imagine taking a high-definition mental snapshot compared to a blurry phone pic if you just glance at something.
Makes sense.
And that deeper encoding, it makes it stick. The professor even said it's much more effective than just writing things down.
More effective, huh? But has it actually been tested?
That's a great point.
Intuition is one thing, but evidence is crucial.
I'd love to see research comparing drawing to traditional note-taking or memorization. See which one wins the recall battle down the line.
Now, that would be a study worth reading.
Absolutely. But speaking of memory over time, we've got to talk about aging.
Ah, yes, aging. A big one.
Things definitely get harder to remember as we get older.
It's not just senior moments. There are actual changes happening at the cellular level. Retrieving information becomes more challenging. And conditions like Alzheimer's disease, they severely impact the brain's ability to encode new memories altogether.
Which makes keeping our brains active even more important, right? Speaking of which, remember that quiz from the BBC segment about foods that are good for memory?
I do indeed. Still wondering if I got it right.
The options were eggs, spinach, or bananas. And guess what? They're all good for your brain.
All of them. How is that possible?
Turns out they're packed with B vitamins. And those B vitamins are crucial for brain health and memory function, especially as we age.
Fascinating.
Right. Like giving our brains the fuel they need to keep those memories firing. Suddenly that spinach omelet sounds really appealing, doesn't it?
Perhaps I'll add those to my grocery list this week. It certainly can't hurt.
Right. It's amazing how something as simple as diet can play such a big role. So we've established that memory is this complex thing affected by a ton of factors. But the good news is
There's good news.
we've got some tools to improve it, and they might be more fun than you think.
Well, that's definitely a relief to hear. Looking forward to learning more.
So we've seen how powerful drawing can be, but what about those classic brain training activities? You know, crosswords, Sudoku, that kind of thing. Did the BBC articles mention those at all?
They did, particularly when discussing memory and aging.
Right, like keeping those neural pathways firing. It's like exercise for the brain, right?
Exactly. And for those who might not be familiar with that term, think of it this way. Imagine your brain as a vast network of roads connecting different cities. Those cities are different parts of your brain.
Okay, I'm following.
And the roads are the neural pathways. Every time you learn something new or practice a skill, it's like paving a new road or widening an existing one.
So the more you use those roads, the smoother and faster the traffic flows.
Precisely. That's what keeps your thinking quick and your memory sharp.
Makes sense. So those brain training games are like putting our brains on the Autobahn.
A great analogy. But it's not just about preventing decline, is it? It's got to be
Yeah.
about more than that.
Right. Like what?
It's about enriching our lives, staying curious, engaging with the world around us, lifelong learning. It's about so much more than just remembering facts. It's about expanding our horizons, keeping our minds flexible.
I like that. So we've got drawing, brain games. What other unconventional ways can we challenge our brains and potentially boost memory?
Well, if drawing, a visual and creative activity, can have such an impact, what about other creative pursuits?
Like what?
Learning a new language. That forces your brain to grapple with new sounds, new structures. Or playing a musical instrument requires coordination, rhythm, memory for melodies.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Even picking up a new hobby, anything that pushes you out of your comfort zone, requires you to think differently. It can create those new neural pathways we were talking about.
I love that. It's like cross-training for your brain. But let's be honest, even with all these tricks, there are still those moments where memory fails us.
You mean those everyday memory slips?
Exactly. You know, forgetting where you put your keys or blanking on someone's name you just met. Any tips for those?
Well, while drawing might not help you find your misplaced keys, the principles behind it can still apply. Paying attention to details, creating associations, actively engaging with information, it can make a big difference.
So instead of just tossing my keys on the counter, I could consciously think, okay, keys are going on the hook by the door.
Exactly. The more actively you engage with the information, the more likely it is to stick.
Oh, that's a good one.
And for names, try associating the person with a memorable feature or a rhyme. Sarah with the sparkling earrings, for instance.
Right. Those little connections become mental hooks to help us retrieve the information later. But sometimes I wonder, are we relying too much on our phones to remember things for us?
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Mm.
Technology can be a helpful tool, but over-reliance can lead to mental laziness. It's like our brains become accustomed to outsourcing the work.
Exactly. So how do we strike that balance? How do we use technology to our advantage without letting our own memory muscles atrophy?
I think it's about being mindful. Choose to memorize those important phone numbers. Try relying on your own sense of direction sometimes, even if it means taking a wrong turn or two. The more we challenge ourselves, the stronger those memory muscles become.
So it's all about finding those opportunities to flex our mental muscles, even in everyday situations, like a continuous brain workout. But with all these different techniques, where do we even start?
Well, I'd say start by identifying the areas where you'd like to improve. Is it remembering names? Recalling information for work or studies?
Okay, makes sense.
And then experiment. See which techniques resonate with you. Some people might find drawing most effective, while others might benefit more from word games or mnemonic devices. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And remember, be patient. Memory, it's a skill. It takes time and practice to develop. It's not going to happen overnight.
Exactly. It's a journey, not a destination. We're all works in progress when it comes to memory.
Speaking of progress, ready for a little brain teaser?
Oh, I love a good brain teaser. Bring it on.
Okay, think back to the beginning of our deep dive today. What was that surprising technique we discussed for potentially boosting memory? Something a little more creative than the usual methods? I'll give you a few seconds to think.
Accessing those memory banks. I believe you're referring to drawing. The concept of enhancing memory through sketching.
You got it. See, paying attention pays off. It's fascinating how something so simple can tap into such powerful memory processes.
It really speaks to the interconnectedness of our cognitive functions, and it highlights the importance of repetition and active recall in solidifying those memories.
So to recap, memory, it's this incredible complex thing. It's influenced by everything around us, but we're not powerless. We have the ability to understand it, to nurture it, and to use it to live richer, more meaningful lives.
And that's a truly empowering message. It's a reminder that the journey of self-discovery and learning, it never truly ends.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Intrigued to hear what you have in mind.
If drawing boosts memory by engaging multiple senses and deeper thinking, what other activities might have similar benefits? Could it be gardening, dancing, cooking? What gets you thinking and moving at the same time? It's like we unlock a secret level in our brain when we combine creativity and learning.
It really does. Like we're challenging the notion that we're either left-brained or right-brained, logical or creative. In reality, it's all interconnected.
Totally. And that's what makes this whole exploration so exciting. There's always more to discover, more connections to make.
Absolutely. But how do you think this idea of drawing to boost memory could be applied in practical ways, beyond just sketching random objects, I mean?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm picturing students using it to study for exams.
Hmm.
Drawing out diagrams or even little visual cues to help them remember key concepts.
Yeah, I like that. Visualizing complex information can definitely make it more accessible, more memorable. And it wouldn't have to be limited to just academic settings either. Imagine professionals using this technique in meetings, presentations,
Oh, I see what you mean.
sketching out ideas instead of just relying on bullet points.
It could transform the way we communicate and share information. Instead of just telling someone something, you're showing them. And that makes it stick.
Exactly. It taps into the power of visual storytelling, which has been a cornerstone of human communication for, well, millennia.
This whole conversation has me thinking differently about how we approach learning and memory. It doesn't have to be a chore. It can be an adventure, a creative exploration.
I love that. That sense of playfulness, that willingness to experiment and try new things can be such a powerful catalyst for learning and growth.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up our deep dive into the world of memory. We've uncovered some amazing insights, from the science behind how memory works to the surprising power of simple techniques like drawing.
We've explored how lifestyle choices, our diet, and even our approach to learning can shape and enhance our memory capacity.
And most importantly, we've learned that memory isn't a fixed entity. It's a dynamic skill that we can cultivate and strengthen throughout our lives.
To our listeners, I encourage you to embrace the power of lifelong learning. Explore those unconventional methods, challenge your assumptions, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Remember, a healthy memory is about so much more than just recalling facts and figures. It's about preserving our experiences, our connections, and the stories that make us who we are.
Beautifully said. May your journeys of discovery be filled with wonder and insight.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those memories vibrant.